The latest Israeli offensive in Gaza has rallied support among Palestinians around the world. One such figure is Dr. Talal Abu-Ghazaleh. The 83-year-old Palestinian was 10 at the time of the Nakba and is now a big business owner in Jordan. And one of his company's buildings in Gaza was also destroyed in the Israeli offensive. We ask him how he sees the future of the Middle East and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Talal Abu-Ghazaleh, thank you so much for speaking to us on TRT World's One-on-One. You were 10 years old at the time of the Nakba and the creation of the State of Israel. Given what's been happening over the past few weeks in the occupied territories from Sheikh Jarrah to the blockaded Gaza, what are your sentiments looking at all these years, these 7 decades of conflict up until now?
May I start by asking you to make some corrections in the description of the situation. First of all, Israel is not a state. The state is called Palestine. Israeli occupation power, yes. And I have said this in many international meetings. To be correct.
So you don't recognize the state of Israel or the existence of the state of Israel?
I don't recognize the state of Israel because there is no state. The definition of a state is to have boundaries and to have a definition of the citizen and a definition of the definition of its laws.
All right, let's expand on this. Let's expand on this argument, Dr. Talal. Usually there are 2 instances here, right? There's 1948, the time of the Nakba, when the state of Israel was thrust upon Palestine, as you say. And then there's 1967, the Six-Day War, and the occupied territories thereafter.
No, my friend. Maybe you would like to call it. It is not. A state is a state. If some occupying power comes and takes over occupation of Turkey and calls itself Nukonoko, you cannot say the state of Nukonoko. The country is Palestine, and as Shakespeare said, a rose is a rose by whatever name you call it.
But the Israelis don't call it that. The Israelis don't call it that. They say there was never Palestine, that they owned these lands for 4,000 years, and they were displaced.
Okay, if you want to go that back, I can also go back to the years when there were no human beings and we were barbarians. This is not useful logic. Let us go to the legal language of the international order. The United Nations calls what happened in Palestine as an occupation. And Israel, what you call Israel, is the occupying power. You cannot have 2 countries in one country. If you tell me that this country with the boundaries that I know from the river to the sea is Israel, where is Palestine? It disappeared. It's like a smoke, it went into the air. This land is Palestine. And it was occupied by the invaders who came from all over the world and through the residents outside, except a very small majority.
All right, let's move the conversation forward, Dr. Talal. Let's go by what you're saying. Israel, whatever state or occupation, has 9 million people, 74% are Jews, 20% are Palestinian Arabs, and 5 million people live under Israeli occupation beyond 1967. Now, so how would you equate this reality?
Let me correct your statistics. As of today, I am a student and I'm a researcher. Today, there is equal population between the 2 nationalities. The land and the country is Palestine. On this Palestine, the Jews and the Arabs are equal in number. When the occupation started, the Jews were only 10% of the population. Now, let's look forward. In 2050, according to statistics, the Palestinians will be double the Israeli Jewish community. And then you will have a beautiful definition of an apartheid state, a state where 1/3 of the population governs the country and discriminates against the other 2/3. Racial discrimination country by definition. So that's why I feel very comfortable. I know that the dynamics of history and geography work to the point where a change becomes inevitable. Unfortunately, if I was a Jew, I would have advised my community to accept this and negotiating a deal now, rather than waiting until the deal is forced on me, exactly as happened in South Africa.
There are some marked differences, and I'll go through them. First of all, if you go by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, the IHRA definition, and this is just something that I want to get your reaction on. They say if you deny the Jewish people the right to a homeland, that is an example of anti-Semitism. Do you think it's anti-Semitism? They say essentially that anti-Zionism can be a guise for anti-Semitism.
Exactly. Thank you, sir. But let me give you an example. If I was Balfour and still living, because this foreign minister of Britain, who decided that the Jews need a home, and he is not God, and he is not the United Nations, they deserve to have a home, and they spent 20 years looking for a location. One location was inside America, in this near Buffalo, and I was there. They were offered many places to choose, like it as if you're choosing your pastry. I like this piece, cut it for me. And you should feel sensitive to what I'm saying, and please be patient with me. If I decide, and I am Balfour, the new Balfour, to take Anatolia from France as a home for the Palestinians, because they deserve to have a home. If you throw them out of Palestine, they become refugees forever. I need to give them home. They deserve a home, and they like Anatolia, and I like it. It's one of the most beautiful spots in the world. And these are people have the right to have their own home. Give it to me. Why are you so anti-Semitic? You refuse to give Anatolia to me. This is not logic. This is not fair. This is not history. This is not geography. This is nonsense.
But Israel is a reality, especially if you speak
it's not.
to Joe Biden. Just 24 hours ago, just a few days ago, Joe Biden came on air in a press conference, and he categorically said that the Arab states and the Arab world would need to accept Israel as a reality.
And who is Biden in this case?
He's the president of the U.S.
So what?
He's the most powerful man in the U.S.
Can the U.S. say that Ankara belongs to France? He doesn't.
So basically, what Biden is saying.
No, he is offering what he doesn't own to persons who do not own it. It is a personal opinion. As far as I am concerned, as an Arab and Palestinian and Muslim, this is a personal implement. It has no foundation.
You say that there is only, these are your words, there's only one state. It's called Palestine, right? Absolutely. It has Jews, it has Palestinians. So all this hoo-ha about the Oslo Accords or whatever, you don't accept the Oslo Accords. You don't accept that as a legitimate vehicle for a two-state solution, because you don't believe in a two-state solution. Is that right?
You don't believe in two-state solution. Nobody with any sense would believe. Look at the map. They put settlements in every location in Palestine. You cannot define, even look at very simply Gaza and what you call the West Bank. There is no connection between them. There is no land connection.
Or what the Israeli Jews call Judea and Samaria, basically.
This Judea and Samaria, I never heard this word. These are names that are mystical. Well, look, the deal of the century disappeared because the owner of the land, who has the key to the land, who has the real estate deed, according to the records of the British government, who offered the real estate deeds, a third party takes my land, gives it to somebody else and say, you have to accept. No, sir. Biden can say what he wants to say with my full respect. And any other leader in the world, or group of leaders, or the whole world, they can say forever that this is a fact. The facts are the facts.
Yeah, but Dr. Talal, okay, your facts, okay, you make a compelling argument. You also mentioned the deal of the century, but the Abraham Accords are also a fact. Jordan's security relationship with Israel and the US is also a fact.
No, that has nothing to do with what we're discussing. If you are discussing the legitimacy of Israel, it does not come from accords, it doesn't come from...
But the UAE the United Arab Emirates just accepted. Bahrain just accepted. Jordan has accepted.
You didn't hear me. I said any country can have its own say and its own opinion, and I respect them. Like I respect Biden's statement, I respect any decision by any country, Arab or otherwise. But I am the owner. I am the person who can decide what is my right and what is not.
So what is this one state then? How do you move it forward when you refuse to accept the legitimacy of Israel?
Now you're talking sense. Okay, let's talk common sense. As I said, in 2050, we will have 2/3 of the country Palestinians and 1/3, because our women are very productive. They produce 10 and 20 children. And they say, Palestinian mother says, I produce so many children because I want to offer them for the fight for liberation. So let me tell you, when that happens, we would be very generously offering to the Jews to live in the country like respected citizens with equal rights in Palestine. We are unlike the Jews. We are not so selfish, and there is no end to their selfishness.
Well, somebody would say that is an unfair remark, because a majority of Jews don't recognize themselves as Zionists or as supporters of Israel. In fact, some Jews are quite vocally against Israeli occupation and the Zionism project.
I wish the 99% of the Jews are like these 1%. Now, you have to be fair when you make a statement. These people, the Magna Carta, they are less than 1% of the Jewish community of the world. They are not my problem. My problem is the Jews who say, Israel, and this is not my statement, this is a statement of a Jewish leader, prime minister, Israel, your boundaries are as far as your army can reach. They refuse to put arms, and I challenge this in Washington at the Institute's Council on Foreign and International Relations. I was on its board. I challenged them to give me a map which is approved by Israel as its borders. They don't want to have any borders.
You raise an interesting point. You mentioned the Israeli military. It is one of the most effective, strongest militaries in the world. It receives $3 billion in aid.
He told me, I don't want to give you a long story why we were talking about. He said, don't underestimate the power of the small. He said, put an elephant and a mosquito in a closed room, the mosquito will win the war. And this huge elephant is hopeless, only shaking his head and his arm when the mosquito bites him. Now this is not a question of who is more powerful. Power is great, but right is greater. The Americans like to say, might is right. We say right is might.
But when?
The believers in their cause win over those who don't have a cause.
But when? Okay, the truth or justice, according to you, might be on your side, but the Israeli might has been there for 73 years. And it seems Israelis say that, okay, this is our land, Israeli Jews especially, and the Arabs or the Palestinians already have a state in Jordan. Why don't they go there? So there's no middle ground left.
You cannot decide another injustice. Why do you want Jordan to be occupied by Palestinians? In order to solve an injustice, you create a second injustice? Who has the authority to decide for me, Jordan, as a sovereign country, that I have to make the Palestinians my own citizen? Why do you put yourself as a judge who can say, give this land to the Palestinians or give this land to the Jews? Palestine was geography and history, and you cannot change the facts. You can impose injustice. We are under occupation for 70 years. We will stay it for another 70 years. Let the world know that there isn't one Palestinian who's willing to give up Palestine for a group of invaders.
You talk about a group of invaders. These group of invaders are security partners with a landlocked country called Jordan. They have relations with Turkey, now the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, secret back-channel talks and relations with Saudi Arabia. So it seems that...
It's irrelevant. You can have relations with whoever. It's irrelevant.
How? How is it irrelevant? You accept the reality if you want to have a relationship with them.
My good friend, we're not talking about relations. We're talking about national rights. National rights.
Well, the UAE doesn't care about your national rights. The UAE doesn't care about Palestinian national rights.
My seats. I care. It doesn't matter what you don't care or not.
But nobody seems to care what the Palestinians...
We don't care. We don't care, and you're not
how
right.
do you solve it? You solve it alone with stones?
Like all occupation wars. We had in history hundreds of occupation wars. Not one of them failed. Every occupation comes to an end. And this one will come to end. You may not like it, too bad. Your decision, and I don't mean you personally, your decision doesn't mean anything to me. I am the landowner. I own the house. I don't want to give it up. You cannot take it away from me until you kill me. Okay, kill now, and let me surprise you with a figure. Kill me now, 30 million Palestinians. Today, there are 30 living million Palestinians all over the world. Not one of them is willing to give up Palestine. What do you do with them?
You tell me. You tell me, what do you do with them? They become Israeli citizens, quote unquote? Do they become Jordanian citizens? In fact, let's ask this question to you. You've been living in exile for 73 years. You were born in Jaffa, but in 1948 at Nakba, you were displaced. As a stateless person, how do you identify? Because you have all these different identities too.
No, I am not a stateless person. I am a refugee. I have my land. I have my state. I want my state back. You stole it from me. You have to give it back to me. That's the only answer. You can bring 1 million arguments. It's useless. These are very stubborn people. You'll have to look at what happened in the 10 days ago. You have to look at the ladies and the men with the arms in the head like this, and he is looking at the soldier, the invader, and smiling and telling him, "Look, this is my land. You're wasting your time here."
73 years, you're 83 years old, and you still have such strong sentiments about this, about your land.
Absolutely. And this is again another fallacy, because when it was the invasion, the occupation started, they said it's a matter of generation. In this generation will die, my generation, and the second generation will forget Palestine. The second generation is more adamant and more emotional about Palestine than me.
So do we foresee more violence then?
Of course, no violence. There is no violence. Don't use that. You see more fight against occupation? Yes, sir. I promise you, and I promise the Israeli occupier, he will see more and much more. And the only solution is for him either to leave the country as an occupier, or to leave his arms and say, "I want to be a citizen in Palestine," and we will welcome him. This is the end. There is no other end. And if anybody who talks now about a two-state is joking, look at the map and show me how can you draw two states. Between every city and every road and every part, there is a settlement. And they planned it well so that there will be no state solution. Because Trump said no state solution, no two states. Now Biden says two-state solution. The next president after him will say no state solution, it's all Israel. And then it can go on forever. No decent citizen in the world gives up his country because of the power of unfairness.
Talal Abu-Ghazaleh.
And I tell you, this word which you didn't mention when you quoted Biden, Jewish state. What does that mean? It means how nice of the US to promote religious states.
In his defense, he did say with Palestinians or Arab Israelis, as he called them, and Jewish Israelis should have equal rights.
Yes, decent life. It means decent life in Geneva or in Ankara, anywhere in the world. This doesn't mean this. There is no contradiction. It is not. It doesn't correct the word Jewish state. They have been fighting for years for any country to give them the right to have a religious state. And the whole history of democracy was against the religious states. All of a sudden now, we have a president who believes, and this is his own belief, he can believe that the world should be run by religious states, a Muslim state, the Catholic state, a Protestant state, fine. This is very serious statement for the world, not for the Palestinians. The Palestinians have deaf ears to whatever politicians say in the world, because they know they cannot expect anything good from them. They don't care what Biden says. I promise you that in the Palestinian circles, there is no discussion at all about what Biden said. He can say what he likes.
Final question. You said the Palestinians don't care about what Biden says, but there's a disconnect among the Palestinians as well. Majority of the population is below the age of 30, but the leadership at the top, especially in Fatah, is, well, I think I'm preaching to the choir. So without effective leadership.
Where effective leadership where?
Among the Palestinians.
You have seen the most effective leadership. And
what, with Mahmoud Abbas?
No, I'm talking about the people under occupation who fought and led the fight.
Mahmoud Abbas is the president of the Palestinian Authority.
Mahmoud Abbas is the president. He is a good friend. I like him. I respect him. But he doesn't represent, he has always been in the philosophy and in the feeling that we get things through negotiation and diplomacy. I disagree with him. And 99% of the people disagree with him. Because in 70 years, things are getting worse through negotiation. The world failed him. He had good intentions. He thought that being proper, decent, polite, reasonable, negotiable, that he can achieve fairness. Of course, he was failed. But the people who are leading the revolution, it is a revolution against occupation, have the best organized and governance leadership.
Dr. Talal Abu-Ghazaleh, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for tolerating me.
Straight Talk,